It should have been funny. Me, an artist who could barely pay rent on time, suddenly living under the same roof as a federal agent who probably ironed her soul every morning along with her shirts. But nothing about it felt like a joke. Not when her eyes sliced through me as if I were a suspect. Not when the sound of her gun resting on the counter reminded me that my life was no longer just mine. I hadn't asked for protection. I hadn't asked for her. Yet there she was, Special Agent Cassandra Hale, assigned to keep me alive. I met her the night my world cracked open. It was supposed to be a simple gallery opening. Nothing fancy, just a small room in Brooklyn where struggling artists like me pinned their hearts to the walls and prayed someone with money would care enough to buy. I had painted a series on intimacy, on how women touched one another without the world's permission. Some people called it daring. Others called it indecent. But when I noticed the man lingering too long near my work, his stare crawling across me instead of the canvas, something inside me froze. He didn't belong. He wasn't here for art. 2 hours later I learned I was right. The cops said the stalker had been following me for weeks. They said his obsession had escalated. They said my safety was compromised. What they didn't say, what they couldn't say, was how terrifying it feels to realize that your life, your body, your freedom can all become someone else's fixation without your consent. So they sent her. Agent Hale. She showed up at my door like a storm, tall, sharp, with black hair pulled into a severe bun that looked like it could cut glass. Her suit was flawless, her voice controlled, her expression unreadable. When she introduced herself, she didn't smile. "You'll be staying with me," she said flatly, flashing her badge as if that explained everything. I blinked at her. "I'm sorry, what? Don't you people usually, I don't know, hide me in some cabin in the woods?" Her eyes swept over my cluttered apartment, the canvases stacked against the wall, the half-finished coffee mugs. "This isn't secure. We moved tonight." I laughed, though it sounded more like panic. "You want me to live with you? Like in your home?" Her gaze was steel. "That's the assignment." And just like that, I was packing a bag and stepping into the orbit of a woman who radiated danger and discipline in equal measure. Her apartment was exactly what I expected. Clean to the point of sterile, every surface gleaming, every object in its place. It didn't smell like a home. It smelled like order. "This is where you'll sleep," she said, gesturing to the guest room. The walls were bare. The sheets looked crisp enough to give me paper cuts. "Wow," I muttered. "Cozy." She ignored me. Or maybe she didn't even hear me. It was hard to tell. That first night, I lay awake listening to the silence. Somewhere in the apartment, she moved, deliberate, precise, a ghost in heels. I thought about how absurd it all was. An FBI agent babysitting a broke painter. Oil and water. Fire and ice. And yet, beneath the absurdity, something pulled at me. Maybe it was the loneliness I glimpsed when she thought no one was watching. Maybe it was the way her hands, steady on her gun, trembled ever so slightly when she reached for her coffee mug the next morning. I told myself not to notice. But I noticed everything. Living with her was like stepping into another universe. She woke before dawn every day, the smell of strong coffee filling the air before I even opened my eyes. She ran 5 miles without fail, her body a machine of precision and endurance. She read reports late into the night, her eyes scanning the screen with relentless focus. Meanwhile, I painted in the guest room, trying to hold on to the parts of myself that weren't swallowed by fear. My brush strokes grew more frantic, my colors darker. I painted her without meaning, to the curve of her jaw, the guarded set of her shoulders, the contradiction of a woman who seemed unbreakable but carried cracks I longed to trace with my fingers. She caught me once. I had just finished a sketch of her sitting at the kitchen counter, lost in thought. When she walked in, I panicked and shoved the notebook closed. "What were you drawing?" she asked. "Nothing," I blurted out. Too fast. Too obvious. Her eyebrow arched, that infuriatingly cool expression never slipping. "You're lying." I flushed. It's just a sketch. Of you. Don't worry, I'm not selling it to the tabloids." For a moment something flickered in her eyes. Surprise maybe. Or discomfort. Then just as quickly it was gone. "Don't," she said simply and walked away. But later that night, I found the sketchbook on the counter. She had slipped a sticky note inside. In neat, controlled handwriting it said, "You made me look softer than I am." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The danger outside kept escalating. Anonymous letters. Strange cars parked near the apartment. Once I answered the phone and heard only breathing. Through it all, she remained unshaken. Or at least that's what she wanted me to believe. But I saw the tension in her shoulders when she thought I wasn't looking. I heard the restless pacing in the hallway outside my door. One night, after a particularly close call, someone had tried to break into the building. I found her sitting on the couch in the dark, her gun on the table, her head in her hands. "You okay?" I asked softly. She didn't look up. "You should go back to bed." Instead, I sat beside her. "You're allowed to be human, you know. Even FBI agents get scared." Her jaw tightened. "Fear gets people killed. Or it keeps them alive," I countered. Silence stretched between us. Then finally she lifted her head. And for the first time I saw her without the mask, the exhaustion, the weight of responsibility, the loneliness etched deep into her features. "I can't afford to care," she whispered. "Not about you. Not about anyone. That's how this job works." My heart ached. "Too late," I said quietly. "Because I already care." She looked at me, then really looked at me. And in her eyes I saw the war she was fighting, the walls she had built, the part of her that longed to let someone in. That was the night everything shifted. We didn't kiss. Not yet. But the air between us changed. Every glance lingered too long. Every accidental brush of hands sparked like fire. I found myself craving her presence, even when she drove me crazy with her rules and routines. And I caught her watching me sometimes, her gaze softer than she intended, as if she were memorizing me against her will. It was dangerous. It was forbidden. And it was inevitable. The next morning, I woke to the sound of her in the kitchen. Not the usual clatter of efficiency, but something slower, quieter. When I padded out in my pajamas, she was standing by the window with a mug in her hand, staring out at the street below. She didn't turn when I spoke. "You should eat. We may have to move again." "Move?" I echoed, pulling the blanket tighter around me. "You mean like pack up everything and run?" Her jaw shifted. "If it keeps you alive, yes." There was no softness in her tone, but there was something else, a shadow of weariness, of being stretched too thin. For the first time, I wondered if she hated this assignment as much as I did. I stepped closer, studying the lines of her face in the morning light. Her hair, usually perfect, was loose around her shoulders, making her look younger, almost human. My chest ached with something I couldn't name. "You ever get tired of being the one who carries all the weight?" I asked. Her eyes flicked to me, sharp as a knife. "That's my job. Doesn't mean it's easy." For a second, her mask cracked. Then she set the mug down and turned away, shutting the moment like a door. "Get dressed. We're leaving in an hour." We didn't end up moving that day, but the tension hung over us like smoke. I painted furiously, canvases filling with colors I couldn't control, stormy blues, burning reds, the gray shadow of a woman's silhouette with eyes that could pierce steel. She watched me sometimes, though she pretended not to. I caught her once, standing in the doorway as I painted, her arms crossed. "What?" I asked, breathless, my brush dripping scarlet. Her lips twitched, not quite a smile, more like a surrender. "You paint like the world is ending." "Maybe it is," I shot back, surprising even myself. Her gaze lingered on the canvas, on the fire and sorrow smeared across it. And for a heartbeat I swore I saw something raw flicker in her eyes. Then her phone buzzed and the moment was gone. That night the danger found us again. We had just settled in for the evening, me with my sketchbook, her with a file spread open on her lap, when the intercom buzzed. "Delivery," a voice crackled. She frowned, set down her file, and approached the door. Without opening it, she spoke into the intercom. "We didn't order anything." Silence. Then a click. Her hand flew to her holster. She motioned for me to get back, her entire body a shield. My heart slammed against my ribs. The next minutes blurred. Her barking orders into her radio, the sound of boots pounding in the hallway, men shouting, the scrape of metal against the door. By the time backup arrived, whoever it was had vanished. But the threat was clear. We weren't safe. Not here. Not anywhere. She was furious, not at me, but at herself. I saw it in the way she paced the apartment afterward, jaw clenched, hands trembling slightly as she reloaded her weapon. "I should have anticipated this," she muttered. I should have. Stop. The word burst out of me before I could think. I grabbed her arm, forcing her to meet my eyes. You can't control everything. You're not a machine, Cassandra. My voice broke. She stared at me, breathing hard. And in that moment, the distance between us shattered. The kiss wasn't planned. It wasn't gentle. It was born out of fear and fury and the desperate need to feel alive. One second I was clutching her arm and the next, her mouth crashed against mine, all fire and restraint breaking. For a heartbeat I froze. Then I melted into her, my hands tangling in her hair, my body arching toward hers as if it had been waiting for this all along. She kissed like she lived with control, with precision. But underneath there was hunger, a storm she couldn't cage. When we finally pulled apart, gasping, the air between us crackled. This can't happen, she whispered, her forehead pressed to mine. It's against protocol. Against reason. Then forget protocol, I breathed. Just for tonight. Her eyes burned into mine, torn between duty and desire. And then she kissed me again, softer this time, like surrender. The days that followed blurred into something dangerous and beautiful. We still lived under threat, still checked the locks 3 times a night, still jumped at every shadow. But between the fear, we carved out moments of something else. She let me see her without armor, laughing once when I burned toast, sighing with quiet relief when I curled against her shoulder during a thunderstorm. And I let her see me, too, not just the terrified woman running from a stalker, but the artist who painted her own survival, who found beauty even in chaos. We didn't label it. We didn't talk about what it meant. But every stolen glance, every brush of hands, every kiss that deepened into something more told the truth. We were falling. Of course, the world didn't care about our fragile happiness. The threats escalated. One evening, she came home with blood on her sleeve. My stomach dropped, but she brushed it off. It's not mine, she said. That should have calmed me. It didn't. Cassandra, this is insane, I snapped. How long are we supposed to live like this? Looking over our shoulders, waiting for the next attack. As long as it takes, she said, her voice like ice. And then what? My throat tightened. You disappear back into your world and I go back to mine? Pretend this, I gestured between us, my chest aching. Never happened. Her silence was worse than any answer. I turned away, tears stinging my eyes. You're so good at shutting people out. But maybe one day you'll realize you shut out the wrong person. I didn't sleep in her bed that night. The next morning, the distance between us was unbearable. She moved through the apartment like a shadow, her walls rebuilt, her face unreadable. But I knew her now. I knew that silence wasn't indifference. It was fear. Still, I couldn't carry both of our fears alone. So I painted. Canvas after canvas, I poured everything into color. The fire of her kiss, the steel of her gaze, the tenderness she tried to bury. I painted our fear, our longing, our fragile love caught in the crosshairs of danger. When she finally saw them, she didn't speak. She just stood in the doorway, staring at the truth splashed across the walls. And then softly, almost too softly, she said, "You make me wish I were someone else." My heart cracked. You don't have to be someone else. You just have to be you. But she shook her head, her eyes shimmering with something like sorrow. You don't understand. People who get close to me, they get hurt. Then let me decide if I'm willing to risk it. Her lips parted, but before she could answer, her phone rang. And just like that, the moment was gone. That call changed everything. The threat wasn't just a stalker anymore. It was bigger, darker, a network tied to something Cassandra had been investigating for months. I wasn't just collateral. I was leverage. We had to move. Not just across the city this time, but out of it. She drove us through the night, her hand steady on the wheel, her jaw tight with unspoken thoughts. I wanted to reach for her to bridge the distance, but the fear in the air was suffocating. When we finally stopped, it was at a safe house in the middle of nowhere, a cabin surrounded by woods, silent except for the wind. "This is it," she said, unlocking the door. "We'll be safe here. For now. For now." The words echoed in my chest like a warning. That night, lying awake in the unfamiliar bed, I realized something with bone-deep clarity. I wasn't just afraid of dying. I was afraid of losing her. Because somewhere between the danger and the kisses, between the silence and the laughter, I had fallen in love with Cassandra Hale. And love, I realized, was the most dangerous thing of all. The cabin was small, just 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a living room that smelled faintly of cedar and dust. It should have felt suffocating, but oddly it didn't. The silence was different here, not sharp with city danger, but heavy with things unsaid between us. Cassandra moved through the rooms like she belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. She checked the windows twice, tested the locks, placed her gun on the nightstand beside her bed. Watching her work, I felt a strange mix of awe and grief. She was so capable, so controlled, yet so achingly alone. When she caught me staring, her brow arched. "What?" I shrugged. "Just wondering if you've ever actually lived anywhere. You know, with messy closets and fridge magnets and a plant you forget to water." The corner of her mouth twitched, the closest thing to a smile I'd seen in days. "Plants die on me. Maybe they just need someone to remind you when to water them." Her eyes softened for half a second, then the steel slid back in place. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start a routine." A routine. Of course. Morning runs through the woods, her pace steady, mine wheezing behind. Coffee and silence. My painting supplies spread across the kitchen table while she pored over files, typing reports with military precision. Dinner cooked in efficient motions, barely seasoned but filling. Yet cracks kept forming in her armor. Like when I teased her about her robotic cooking and she deadpanned, "Fine, tomorrow you cook." The next evening, she actually ate my burned lasagna and said, "Not bad," though her eyes watered from the spice overload. Or when we played cards one rainy afternoon, and I caught her smirking when she beat me for the 3rd time. "You're cheating," I accused. Her laugh, low, rare, genuine, startled me so much I nearly dropped the deck. Moments like those made the danger fade, if only for a heartbeat. Made me forget that we weren't just 2 women in a cabin learning each other's rhythms. We were protector and protected, agent and witness, bound together by circumstances neither of us chose. But nights were the hardest. I heard her pacing sometimes, soft footsteps in the hall. Other times she sat outside on the porch, watching the woods as if expecting them to swallow us whole. One night I joined her. The air was cool, the stars sharp above the treeline. She didn't look at me when I sat down. "Trouble sleeping?" I asked. Her jaw clenched. "I don't sleep much." "You're afraid something will happen." Her silence was answer enough. I hesitated, then reached out, my hand brushing hers on the porch railing. She stiffened but didn't pull away. "You don't have to carry this alone," I whispered. Her eyes finally met mine, dark, haunted, searching. For a moment, she looked like a woman drowning, desperate for something to hold on to. And then she kissed me. This time it wasn't anger or desperation driving her. It was slow, deliberate, like she was memorizing me with every press of her lips. We moved inside, tangled in each other, leaving behind the sharp lines of duty and fear. Clothes fell away, walls crumbled, and for once, Cassandra let herself be vulnerable. Her touch was both commanding and trembling, her breath ragged against my skin. And I gave myself to her completely, painting with my body the tenderness I could never capture on canvas. Afterward, we lay tangled in the narrow bed, her arm heavy across my waist, her breathing finally steady. "Do you regret it?" I whispered into the dark. Her grip tightened. "No. But I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Of what happens when this ends." I turned to face her, brushing hair from her face. "Then maybe we don't let it end." Her eyes searched mine, full of all the things she couldn't say. She didn't promise me forever. But she kissed me again, and for now that was enough. Days bled into weeks. We found a fragile rhythm. Danger outside, stolen intimacy inside. She taught me how to hold a gun, my hands clumsy but determined under her steady guidance. I taught her how to paint, laughing when she frowned at her crooked brushstrokes. "You're supposed to make it look like a tree," I teased. "It is a tree," she insisted, deadpan. "Then I'm scared to see your idea of a house." She rolled her eyes, but when she thought I wasn't looking, she studied my hands, the way I coaxed color onto canvas. And I studied her too, the way she softened when she let herself forget the badge. I think we both knew it couldn't last. But neither of us said it out loud. The illusion broke on a Wednesday. She had gone into town for supplies, leaving me with strict instructions not to open the door for anyone. When she came back, her face was pale, her hands shaking just slightly as she set down the bags. "What happened?" I asked, dread curling in my stomach. They know, she said flatly. The network we're after. They know you're here. They're closing in. My heart stopped. So what do we do? Her eyes met mine, fierce and unyielding. We fight. The next days were a blur of preparation. She checked the perimeter, set up traps, ran me through drills. I tried to focus, to follow instructions, but fear gnawed at me. One night, as we cleaned weapons at the table, I whispered, "What if we don't make it?" She didn't flinch. "Then we make damn sure we take them down with us." I swallowed hard. That's not good enough. Her gaze softened just a fraction. "Then we survive. Both of us. Understand?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure I believed her. The attack came sooner than either of us expected. It was past midnight when the first gunshot shattered the silence. Cassandra was up in an instant, pulling me down behind the couch as the windows exploded inward. "Stay down," she barked, returning fire with deadly precision. My heart pounded, every nerve screaming. This wasn't training. This was life or death. Through the chaos, I caught glimpses of her, fierce, unbreakable, a warrior carved out of fire and steel. And yet, she was still the woman who had kissed me under the stars, who had laughed at her own terrible painting. I refused to lose her. When one of the attackers broke through the back door, I grabbed the gun she had pressed into my hands days earlier. My arms shook, but I fired. The man crumpled. Cassandra's eyes flicked to me, pride, relief, terror all at once before she turned back to the fight. The battle stretched into eternity, but eventually silence fell. The cabin was wrecked, the air thick with smoke and fear. But we were alive. Barely. She staggered toward me, blood seeping from a wound on her shoulder. My chest clenched. "No," I whispered, catching her as she swayed. "Stay with me. Please." Her lips curved in a faint smile. "You're stronger than you think." Then her eyes fluttered closed. I pressed my hands to her wound, tears blurring my vision. "Don't you dare leave me, Cassandra. You don't get to break down my walls and then disappear. You hear me? You stay. You stay." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Reinforcements finally. I held her against me, my heart breaking and healing all at once. Because in that moment I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever battles lay ahead, I would fight them. Not just for my life, but for hers. For us. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. I hated it. The bright lights, the endless beeping machines, the way time stretched into something cruel. Cassandra lay in the bed, pale against the white sheets, her arm bandaged, for lines running into her veins. She looked nothing like the untouchable agent who had stormed into my life weeks ago. She looked fragile. Human. And I hated that too, hated seeing her like this, hated knowing I had almost lost her. When the doctors finally let me in, I sat beside her, clutching her hand even though she didn't stir. "You don't get to leave me," I whispered fiercely. "Do you hear me? You don't get to break down my walls, make me fall for you, and then vanish. I won't let you." For a while, the only answer was the steady beep of the monitor. Then slowly, her fingers twitched against mine. Her lips parted, her voice hoarse. "You talk too much." A laugh burst out of me, wet with tears. "Shut up. You're alive." Her eyes fluttered open, dark and tired but focused. "Told you we'd survive." I leaned closer, pressing my forehead to hers. "Don't scare me like that again." She gave the faintest smile. "No promises." The bureau swarmed the hospital, agents in suits filling the halls. They praised Cassandra for holding off the attackers, for protecting a key witness. They barely glanced at me, the civilian artist caught in the crossfire. But I didn't care about their reports, their commendations, their politics. I cared about her. When they talked about reassignment, about moving her back into the field, I felt my chest tighten. "You're just going to leave?" I demanded one evening when we were finally alone. Her eyes flicked to me, guarded again. "That's how this works. The case isn't over. I have to see it through." I shook my head, tears stinging. "No. You don't get to walk away and pretend this meant nothing. Not after everything." Her jaw tightened. "It's not about pretending. It's about survival. People close to me get hurt. I already got hurt," I shot back. "And I'd do it again. Because being with you even for a moment is worth it." She froze, my words hanging in the air like a challenge. Then, softly, almost brokenly, she whispered, You make me want things I was never supposed to want. I reached for her hand, then stopped fighting it. Want them? Want me? Her eyes searched mine, fierce and vulnerable all at once. And for the first time she didn't pull away. Recovery was slow. Her shoulder healed, though the scar would always be there. She grumbled through physical therapy, cursing under her breath when her body didn't obey the way it used to. I teased her, called her stubborn, earned a glare sharp enough to cut glass, but beneath it, I saw the flicker of gratitude that I was there. We moved back into the city eventually, into an apartment that wasn't hers or mine but ours. It wasn't perfect, the walls were thin, the neighbors noisy, and the kitchen barely big enough for two. But it had messy closets, fridge magnets, and yes, even a plant we constantly forgot to water. She claimed she hated it. But every time I caught her watching me paint by the window, a softness in her eyes she never admitted to, I knew the truth. The trial against the network came months later. I testified, trembling but determined, my art used as evidence of what I'd endured, the obsession that had nearly consumed me. Cassandra sat in the front row, her presence a silent anchor. When it was over, when the verdict was guilty and the chains of fear finally loosened, we walked out of the courthouse hand in hand. Cameras flashed, voices shouted, but I didn't care. For once the world could see. You did it, I said, looking up at her. Her lips curved in the smallest, proudest smile. We did it. Life after danger was strange. Quiet. Too quiet at first. No drills, no late-night pacing. No gun resting on the nightstand. Just mornings filled with coffee and evenings filled with paint-stained fingers and Cassandra's terrible attempts at cooking. One night, curled together on the couch, I asked, "Do you miss it? The job?" She was silent for a long time. Then finally she said, "Sometimes. But I don't miss being alone." I smiled, resting my head against her shoulder. "Good. Because you're stuck with me now." Her arm tightened around me. "I know." And in her voice I heard peace. We built a life piece by fragile piece. She learned how to let someone in. I learned how to be brave not just on canvas but in love. We fought, we laughed, we hurt, we healed. And slowly, surely, the cold-hearted FBI agent who had once terrified me became the woman I couldn't imagine living without. Months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, I woke to find her gone from the bed. Panic flared until I heard the soft clatter in the kitchen. I padded out to find her standing there, messy-haired and barefoot, holding a mug of coffee in one hand and a spatula in the other. The smell of pancakes filled the air. I stared. "You're cooking." She gave me a deadpan look. "Don't get used to it." I laughed, walking over to steal a kiss. "Too late. I already am." She kissed me back, warm and unguarded, and for the first time I realized we weren't just surviving anymore. We were living. Together. And maybe love didn't erase the scars. Maybe it didn't erase the fear or the battles that had brought us here. But it gave us something stronger, a reason to keep fighting, a reason to keep choosing each other every day. And that, I realized, was everything. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.